Now let's really briefly go into the extra deck type monsters. I talked about in the last video the extra deck type monsters, so go watch it. There are 4 types, as I said. There are only 4 different types of extra deck monsters. There are Xyz monsters. Here's an Xyz. You could see it says it right there. Look right under. See, it says Divine Arsenal, Double A Zeus, Sky Thunder. This is one of the best extra deck, generic extra deck monsters in the game. Almost everyone plays this card. Okay, obviously, look at the popularity. And it's a level 12, the highest level you can be. Technically a rank 12, because Xyz monsters are considered ranks, not levels. Let me just explain that real quick. Every monster in the game has levels. Xyz monsters have ranks, and this wording does come into effect, by the way. When you play the game, you'll learn this. And then the only other monsters that aren't levels are, besides Xyz, which is rank, are links, which are blue. These are links. It's an extra deck monster. Links are link ranks. They don't even have ranks. As you can see, they don't have levels or ranks. There's nothing there. It just says, if you look at the bottom, it only has attack too, by the way, because link monsters can only be in attack position. They cannot go in defense position. They can only stay in attack position. That's the only way they come out. So you can't even put them in attack position. Even if your opponent tried to do it, they can't do it. Because it only has attack. It has 1850 attack, as you see, no defense. And it says Link 2, meaning it's a Link 2 monster. Okay? We'll get into that. But let's start with Xyz. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Let's go over each one. So you have Xyz. They're black. And you'll see right there, right underneath where it says it's a light attribute, rank 12, and it says machine. That's the type of monster it is. Xyz and its effect. Everything's an effect monster, so you don't have to really worry about that. And if you look, it has 3,000 attack, 3,000 defense. That's like the standard for a good extra deck monster. Not all extra deck monsters are that powerful, but 3,000 is is very good. Especially if the monster has really good effects, then it's really good. So you'll notice a lot of the good extra deck monsters are around 3,000 attack. Might be a little less. Then there are some monsters even more powerful. They might be a little more, like 3,500 attack. Okay, but that's hefty. 3,000 is hefty. So that's a Xyz. It says XYZ, but we call it Xyz or Xyz. Then you have Link. Like I said, Link are blue. They are, they're blue. And, they use links. I'll get into that. So these are like the top most popular. This is the most popular synchro card. I use this card a lot. I love this card. People are tired of this card because a lot of people use them. Even decks that don't play synchro monsters sometimes use this card, okay? That's how good this card is. Baron de Flor. Really cool artwork. Really nice card. It's a warrior. It's a synchro. It's a wind attribute. A level 10. And, it's a wind level 10 warrior. 3,000 attack, 2,400 defense, and has some sort of effect. So that's synchro. And then the last one you need to know is fusion. So a fusion's purple. So synchro's white, Link is blue, Xyz is black, and fusion is purple. So as you read this one, Garura Wings of Resonant Life is a dark attribute monster. It's a level 6. It's a winged beast. That's its type. It's a fusion, which is what extra deck type monster it is. It has 1,500 attack and 2,400 defense, and then it obviously has an effect. All these cards have effects. Okay. So let me explain how these work. Okay. Xyz monsters. All right. How they work are. And remember, there's always exceptions to the rule. And I'm saying that because I'm going to tell you the generalities. Just remember that there are always exceptions. Most Xyz monsters are going, almost all of them, how you summon them is you need 2 of the same level monsters. As you can see here on Zeus, it says right above its text, its description, its effects. Right above it, you see in italics, it says 2 level 12 monsters. Right below where it says machine XE's effect, in parentheses, right below that says 2 level 12 monsters. Now, it's a lot easier to summon it than that in the description. It says, but all XE's monsters pretty much are summoned like this. You need 2 cards, sometimes 3, sometimes even 4, but for the majority of them, you need 2. 2 of the same level of monster on the field. Okay, so let's say you got 2 level 12s in this instance on the field. You use those 2 monsters as material. We call them materials to summon extra deck monsters. Those 2 materials now come together to create this monster, which is Zeus. Zeus comes on the field, and the 2 monsters that created it now actually get attached to this card. Interestingly, this is the only type of monster that does this. Only XE's monsters actually attach the materials that they use to the card itself, because XE's monsters use a lot of effects by detaching those monsters as well. So that's how that works. So those materials get attached to it, and then it becomes that monster, right? But those 2 monsters that attach to it are no longer considered on the field. They're literally part of the new monster within it. So that's how XE's works. Basically, pretty simple. You need 2 of the same level monsters on the field, generally. Links, okay, link monsters. If you look at this card, the Dark Charmer, Gloomy, it says under the Spellcaster Link effect, it says 2 monsters, comma, including a dark monster. So any 2 monsters, but one of them has to be a dark attribute monster, can make this card. 2 because it's a link 2. How links work are, and then they don't all. It's not like XE's where you need 2 of the same level of monsters for, that's the general rule for all XE's. In this case, how links works, the general rule is you usually need the number of monsters as material as the number of link it is. So if it's a link 3, you need 3 monsters. If it's a link 4, you need 4. Here's the thing. There's a thing called link climbing, and this is where links become interesting. Everything has their own little interesting thing about them, every extra deck monster. The interesting thing about links is that, let's say you were to make Dark the Dark Charmer, okay, with 2 monsters, including a dark. Those 2 monsters, which are on the field, by the way, most extra deck monsters have to use monsters on the field. Those 2 monsters are on the field. Now, they've been used as materials to create Dark the Dark Charmer. Now, unlike XE's, because I said XE's are the only ones that attach monsters to themselves, to the card. Links, when you use those 2 monsters as material, they get sent to the graveyard. They've been used as material. They're fodder, basically. Go to the graveyard. They're done with. Now, this replaces those 2 monsters on the field, and that's what it becomes. It becomes Dark the Dark Charmer. Now, let's say you want to go into a link 3, okay? This is where link climbing happens. Let's just say you have another monster on the field also, not, including Dark the Dark Charmer. So you have Dark the Dark Charmer, and you have some other main deck monster, generic monster, whatever, from your main deck on the field. So now you have 2 monsters, but you can go into a link 3 because how it works is a link 2 counts as 2 monsters for a link summon. So essentially, the 2 monsters you use to create this monster still apply. So like this counts as 2 links for a link 3. And then that 3rd monster that's on the field would be the 3rd link. So all you would need is this card and one other card to create a link 3. Let's say you wanted to make a link 4. You would need this card, which counts as 2 of the links, and then 2 other monsters to make the link 4. You understand what I'm saying? This counts as a 2, as 2 monsters. You could also do this with a link 3 into a link 4. If you have a link 3, okay, I think there's a link 3 right here. Where's Unicorn? Well, this is a link 4 Access Code Talker. is a big monster. And you'll notice it's at Access Code Talker says 2+ effect monsters. This is a great generic extra deck monster that a lot of people play. 2+ effect monsters. How could it be 2+ if it's a link 4? Just as I said, all you need is a link 3 and one other monster, and you can create this thing. As long as, see, the link just has to be, the link basically replaces the amount of monsters you need for the card. If you were to use just all generic main deck monsters, you would need 4 monsters to create this thing. Okay? But because, let's say you have a link 3 and one other monster, you can also create this thing. So that's how link climbing works. So you could climb to higher link monsters, because the stronger monsters are the higher link monsters. You climb using the lower link monsters. Link monsters come in real handy because there's even link 1s. So that means you only need 1 monster to create it. And, link 1s can come in handy too sometimes. You don't see it too often. Usually you see a lot of link 2s because it could help just like extend your plays, okay? All right, so that's link. I really don't want to go over this too much because this is already long. What was the other one? All right, we'll do fusion next. So here's Predaplant Dragostapelia. It's a dark level 8. It's a plant type, and it's a fusion. Okay, of course. And you'll notice all these extra deck monsters have a little italic text above their actual effects, their effect text. And this one says 1 fusion monster plus 1 dark monster. Now, the thing with fusion monsters is they have their own little thing too. Is you can't just have 1 fusion monster and 1 dark monster and then you could create this. In order to create a fusion monster, and remember there's always exceptions to these rules, in order for you to create a generic in order for you to create a fusion monster, you need something else. You need, and generally, for the most part, you need a spell, what's called a fusion spell. And every archetype, well, not every archetype, but almost a lot of archetypes have their own archetypal fusion spells. A lot of them have. And then there's generic fusion spells. Like the most generic fusion spell is called polymerization. And that's the thing about fusion spells. They usually need, fusion monsters. They usually need a fusion spell, in order to allow you to create this monster. And that might sound like, oh, that kind of sucks compared to the links and the XCs because they sound way more easy to summon. Yeah, true, but guess what? The XCs and the links, the only way you could summon them is with monsters on the field. With fusion monsters, it gets a little more complicated because you're using spells. There are some really good fusion spells out there where they allow you to actually use monsters from your hand, or use monsters from your graveyard, or even use monsters from your deck. Branded Despia is the biggest fusion, has the best fusion spell in the game called Branded Fusion, where they could literally use and it's usually 2 monsters to fusion off into a monster. It's usually not more than 2. Sometimes it might be 3, but they're very specific monsters too. Usually, like this one says, you need an actual other fusion monster and a dark monster to create this, but you also need a spell to actually make this happen. Now, it's not always a spell. Sometimes it's a sometimes, like in Tearlaments, their monsters actually say you can fusion summon. Branded Despia have monsters that say you can fusion summon. Ow, my leg hurts. Oh man. So it depends. It really depends. But for the most part, you're probably you have to use something else, whether it be a spell or an effect from a monster, to allow you to fusion off into a fusion monster. And that might sound bad, but like I said, you can, like Branded Fusion can use 2 monsters from the actual deck to fusion summon a monster. That means you're using no resources, basically. You're pulling out any 2 monsters from the deck to be able to fusion off into a powerful extra deck monster without using any of your resources from your hand or from your field or from your graveyard. So it can be extremely beneficial fusioning. It's the only extra deck monsters that could actually use cards from your hand or your graveyard or your field or even your opponent's field. Okay, you could even use monsters from your opponent's field to fusion your own fusion monsters. So basically, you could remove your opponent's monsters by fusioning them off with your own monsters, or even you could even use two of your opponent's monsters to make your own monster. So you could go basically plus plus two, or what is that? Yeah, -2 +3, because you're removing two of your opponent's monsters and you're creating your own monster off two of your opponent's monsters. So there are huge benefits to doing something like that. And that's where fusion has its advantages. Okay, but that's how it works. I don't want to go so deep into that because there is a lot more complications in that. But generically, know that that's where its advantages. But you also usually need a card, whether it be a monster or a spell, to conduct the fusion. Okay, and then there's synchro, which is my favorite, because synchro monsters tend to be extremely strong, really powerful monsters. Um, Fusions are too. Links can be, but usually it's the more higher level links that you have to climb to, obviously, and XCs can be as well, but the really good XCs are usually harder to get to. It all depends on the archetype, but generically speaking, I feel like synchro monsters are like the most powerful, the generic ones, and this is like the most powerful generic synchro monster. So synchro, my favorite. Baron de Fleur, not my favorite monster, but a synchro monster is my favorite monster, by the way. Chen Yang, which I'll show you. I wonder if it's here. Let's see if we can find Chen Yang. I mean, people love. There's another one, Chaos Ruler. I play that as well. There's Chen Yang. This is my favorite monster in the game. It's a sword soul monster, which is an archetype in a deck that a lot of people play. A very good deck. It's always good, and a great deck for starters. This would be my number one recommended deck to beginners. By the way, Sword Soul. So you might be playing this monster, and this is my favorite monster. I play it in my punk deck, but that's neither here or there because it is generic, even though it's a Sword Soul monster. So it's called Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Chen Yang. I just call it Chen Yang. It's a water, level 10, worm. All the Sword Soul monsters are worms. Synchro effect, of course. And it's little italic text, which, as you have seen, all the extra deck monsters have these little italic texts, and then they have their effects. And as you can see, it has a lot of effects underneath there. It's a 3,000 attack, 3,000 defense monster. You see the pattern form. There's a pattern forming here, if you could catch it. But see what it says. It says 1 tuner plus 1 plus non-tuner monsters. That's why it's generic. Baron de Fleur also says that 1 tuner plus 1. Anything that says 1 tuner plus 1 non-tuner monster, that's generic because you can use any tuner and any non-tuner monster to create this. Now, what does that mean? So remember, every extra deck has its little thing you've seen so far. Xyz has its little thing that it attaches the monsters to it, and it needs 2 of the same level. Links have its little link climbing thing and how they connect because a link 2 and another monster can make a link 3. And by the way, fusion and linking and synchroing all sends these monsters to the graveyard for the most part, whereas Xyz attaches the monsters to the card. But there are exceptions with the fusion. Some fusion cards might say banish the 2 materials. Materials meaning the 2 monsters that you use to make the fusion monster. They might have to be banished, or they might have to be shuffled back to the deck from the graveyard or whatever. Because you can fusion from so many different places, not just the field, there's different places that they can go as materials, not just the graveyard, okay? But Synchro has that standard, okay, you use the materials, they get sent to the graveyard, and the materials have to be on the field. So A tuner are specific monsters. It'll say tuner on it. It has a little symbol, a little green like tuning symbol on it usually. They're usually smaller monsters. You won't see big leveled monsters as tuners. Usually they're level 1, 2, 3. I don't even know if there's level 4 tuners. There could be. I really don't think there is. I think there's only level 1, 2, and 3 tuners. Because how it works is you use one tuner on your field plus 1 plus non-tuner monsters, meaning this is a level 10, okay? So this involves math, by the way. So let's say you have a level 3 tuner on the field. And then you summon a... Now, in order to get to this card, you need a level 7 monster, a regular level 7 monster, with the level 3 tuner to create this card. The actual levels have to add up to the level of the monster that you're making. So if you're making a level 10 synchro, you need a 3 and a 10 and a 7. So the 3 would be the tuner, the 7 would be the non-tuner. But it says 1 plus non-tuner, so you could actually use a level 3 tuner plus a level 4 regular monster and another level 3 regular monster. But that rarely ever happens. That's a waste of resources. Usually you want to just use the 1 tuner and 1 non-tuner. Like that's how it generically, most of the time, that's how you're going to do it. So you have a 7 and a 3, and that makes it 10. If you needed to make a 12 with a 3, you need a 9. A 9 and a 3. That's how you make a 12, etc., etc., etc. And that's how synchro monsters work. Those monsters have to be on the field, just like XEs, just like Link. Not quite like Fusion, but that's how that works. You can banish one, and then it has its effects and all that stuff. So that's how you create the extra deck monsters. There's the extra deck for you right there. I'll go deeper into it. We could talk more about it on another episode. But for now, that's what I wanted to talk about in terms of card analytics, intro to card analytics, advanced card analytics. I already talked for a while about all this stuff. I hope you get the gist of it. Rewatch it if you have to. I hope it wasn't too confusing. And since this video is going to be real long, I bit off more than I could chew here. I don't think we could do game mechanics and game flow. We could go into that in the end once you understand all this basic stuff. Master Duel interface, once again, I think I'm going to do that with the gameplay mechanics because I want to do that on actual Master Duel. I want to show you. I want to go through the motions with you to show you that. So that's going to be the next episode, which I'm going to do very soon, by the way, because I'll do it while I'm playing Master Duel. But this was more about the more in-depth card analytics about what cards look like, the different extra deck type monsters, and then I'm going to get into how this all comes together. I think you're starting to see how this all comes together, right? You're seeing how spells can get you to your monsters. Your monsters can get you to your extra deck monsters. They combo off. That's comboing. Like basically synchro summoning into a monster is a combo. There are other combos too, but you're starting to grasp. I hope you're starting to grasp how all this is coming together, right? But in reality, though, I could tell you all this stuff, but you really got to play to gain experience on this. I just hope this is a good way for you to just grasp the main concepts of the game. And then, when I play on Master Duel and show you the Master Duel stuff and all that stuff and the flow state of games and the phases and everything, then you're really going to understand when I show you that. So this part, gameplay mechanics and Master Duel interface, we'll go over in episode 3. I'm sorry. I thought I could do all this. There was no way. I'm sorry, man. It's too much. And I'm tired already from talking. But deck building we can talk about. Where to start. I'll do this briefly. Where to start when choosing and building your deck. Plus how to build your deck. Now, I hate to really talk about this and then just, not show you how a game goes. And even when I show you how the game goes, even when I show you how a Master Duel match goes and the different phases and everything else, I gave you a lot of information today. It's a lot to take in. But when you see it, it'll be better for you to see the actual flow of the games and the matches, etc. You'll learn a lot more that way. and then you'll understand how the game is played. Building a deck is kind of separate, so I feel like I could talk about that a little bit. As you see here, you have all these decks, right? Oh, look, the deck I play the most, basically my favorite deck is Punk. Okay, this is a deck. It looks like it's one of the most popular right now, and I've been doing really well with it. As you can see, these are all Punk decks that people play that they've posted, and it tells you what top they got to. It looks like everybody here is at Master 5. So let's see this newest Master 5 deck that made August 9th, today. Well, yesterday. Um, okay. As you could see already, 3 Max C. We talked about Max C. Look, he's got 3 Max C. Oh, Ash Blossom, 3 Ash Blossom. Because Ash Blossom actually stops Max C, as you could tell, because I explained this earlier. This is a hand trap. This is a hand trap. Punk plays a lot of hand traps because this is the last thing I'm going to go over for the night, and then for this video, and then we'll go into the next one because I really don't want to make it too long for you guys, too much information, but I'm going to explain how a deck works. So you have archetypes. Archetypes are not like types. Okay, so Punk is the archetype. Punk, okay? The Punk cards, so these first cards right here, all of these are all just generic hand traps. These are staples, like we talked about. And these are all hand traps. That's 3, 6, 9, 10. He's got 10 hand traps just right here. That's a lot. Punk usually does play a lot of hand traps because there's a lot of room in the deck to play hand traps. The thing is, you got to be careful. You don't want to play too many because then you clog your deck, right? And that's another thing. Ratios in the deck is a big deal. There are other archetypes that are huge that can't fit all these different cards and all these different hand traps. So they play other cards. You know, he has no other hand traps though. He's not playing Imperm. Oh, he does. He has the Bestials. Okay, this is another archetype. So he's playing a hybrid archetype. This is pretty much exactly what I play, except I play it a little differently. I don't play the 3 effect Veiler and stuff. But here's the start of the archetype. So what Gagaku Punk Wagan. This is a Earth attribute, level 3, Psychic tuner. It's a tuner, by the way, because this is a heavy synchro deck, Punk deck. That's why I like it. So it's a tuner, and it has all these effects. It's 900 attack, 600 defense. It doesn't matter because you don't use it for that. This is just basically a resource to get into your extra deck, right? To get to extra other cards, right? But this is, so the type is Psychic. Now, it just so happens most of the Punk cards are Psychic. Madame Spider is a Psychic. Xiamen is a Psychic. Shirakusai, I love Shirakusai, is a Psychic. Deer Note is a Warrior. So they're not all Psychic, but they're all Earth so far, by the way. All their attributes have been Earth. And every deck is different. Not every deck is going to have, not every deck, every archetype. I mean, every archetype is different. Not every archetype is going to have, all their attributes be the same and all their types be the same. Some of them will be all different types with all the same attributes. Some of them will be all different attributes with all the same type. It all depends, right, on the archetype. So this is an archetype. So notice how they all say Punk somewhere in their name. This has Punk in the 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 name. Deer Note, which is your level 5. By the way, these are all level 3 tuners. This, Spider, Xiamen, Shirakusai. They're all level 3 tuners. Then you go into your higher level Punks. You got Deer Note is level 5, but it's a Warrior. Still Earth, though. Let's skip these. These are all the Bestials. That's a different archetype and a different engine. An engine, by the way, you need to know this. An archetype is the entirety of something. So, like, Punk, okay, is the archetype. But there are, let's say, I don't know how many. The Punk archetype is not big because it's kind of newer. The Punk archetype maybe has, let's say, 15 to 20 total cards, meaning individual cards, not 3 of each. But it maybe has 15 to 20 individual cards in the archetype. But every archetype has cards that are not good or aren't useful, so they don't use them. So we call the core cards of a archetype the engine, because those are the most important ones. Those are the ones you're going to use in the deck. The other ones are pretty much useless. So that's the difference between archetype and engine. So like the punk is the archetype, but the engine is what's used in the deck from that archetype. Got it? So bestials, if you see here, now we're in the bestial part of the deck. So there's a lot of hybrid decks out there. Some decks play 3 different archetypes in their deck, 3 different archetypal engines, because an engine can only be from its own archetype. You know what I mean? Only the same archetype can have an engine. You can't have 2 different archetypes consist of an engine. So if you have 3 different archetypes in a deck, you basically have 3 different engines. And they might be 3 little small engines, but there's 3 engines in that deck. So that's like a hybrid. And a lot of decks are hybrid. Majority of decks are pretty much hybrid. There are pures out there. And a pure would be basically a deck that uses one archetype plus a bunch of hand traps and some other generic going second cards and stuff like that. But that's how that works. And so here's the bestials. You'll see their bestial archetype because it says bestial in front of every one of their fucking names. Bestial Druisworm, bestial Magnamot. And they're all dragons, by the way. They're all dragon. Well, these are all dragon dark. If you see, this is a level 6 dragon dark. This is a level 6 dragon dark. Bestial Magnamot. Bestial Saranir, level 6 dragon dark. Bestial Baldrake, level 6 dragon. You know, so, but why are we using this in the punk deck? Because these are also hand traps, which is insane. And they summon and they banish. They're insanely good cards right now, especially against Tearlaments, which is the top deck. So that's why it works so well. But it also has synergy, and that's the whole thing about these engines is that the bestial archetype and the engine, the main cards of its engine that you play in your deck, has synergy with your other archetype's engine in the deck. You want it to have synergy in some way, shape, or form. That's something for a more advanced later time, but I'm trying to explain to you how a deck is built here. So those are all the bestials. He's playing a card I play. I play this card, but I play it at 1. He's playing it at 2. The Ascendant of Thunder. So this is sort of what we call like a garnet. A garnet is like basically any card in a deck that's not a hand trap or a staple or like a going second card, generic going second card. It's usually a non-archetypal card that's useful in a deck. That isn't a hand trap or a staple. You know what I mean? So like this card is called the Ascendant of Thunder. I play it 2. I play it at 1. It's a level 7 light thunder monster. It has nothing to do with punk. It has nothing to do with bestial. It's just a really good card to have for the deck. It can be really useful. So that's what we call a garnet. Now we're back to the punks. Here's a punk, Foxy Tune. These are your level 8 punks. It's not even Earth. This is the first punk we haven't saw that isn't Earth, and it's not even Psychic. Even though Deer Note we said isn't Psychic, it's Warrior. This is a Beast Light level 8. So it's the highest level we've seen so far, and it does its effects and whatever. That's Foxy Tune. Love Foxy Tune and Ogre Dan. There's a pair. There's 2 individual pairs of these. We play them at 3 each because they're so good, but there's only 2 of them individually. You know what I'm saying? As an individual card, even though you play 3 of them. There's Foxy Tune, which is a light 8 beast, and then you have Ogre Dance, which I love too. Is a dark. It's the opposite of light. It's a dark 8 also, but it's a fiend. So this deck has like a nice variety. Punk has a nice variety of different types and attributes and stuff, which is cool. And that's essentially all the punk monsters. But you see, there's a lot of them. You know, and some of them you're playing at 3, like Xiamen is your ultimate starter, played at 3. Right? Then you have another bestial, Lubellion. This is the king of the bestials, really. If you notice. If you look at it as like a story almost, or as like a lore, type of thing. The other level 6 bestials are like his minions. And then you have Bestial Lebellion is like the boss. He's a level 8. They're all level 6s. He's a light. They're all dark. He's also a dragon just like them. But he doesn't do what they do. He does a lot more than they do. The only thing they have over him is that those other level 6 bestials can be used as hand traps. Lebellion cannot. So, but very powerful card, by the way. He's playing it at 3. I play it at 2. Then here's another punk card. This is the punk field spell. We talked about field spells. So that's part of the engine and the archetype, the punk archetype engine. Branded Regained. This is part of the bestial engine. Even though it's technically not really a bestial card, it has bestial in the card. Like it says it. Like if you read further down, it says you can target one bestial monster in your graveyard, special summon it. So it's part of the bestial archetype / engine, but it's technically not a bestial archetype card, but it is. It's part of that engine. We have another card like that, Italy. So Italy.
The right mattress makes everything clear.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Exactly.
Are you fucking kidding me? Emergency Teleport, one of the best cards in the game. Ridiculous card. It's a 2-of. You can only play 2. Older card. And why is that? Usually older cards are not once per turn. Or hard once per turns. Like, if you notice, a lot of the cards I read say you can only play Max C once per turn. This card does not say that at all. This card says special summon one level 3 or lower psychic type monster from your hand or deck, but banish it during the end phase of this turn. Doesn't say once per turn at all. You could literally play, if you have 2 of these in hand, you can play both of them in the same turn. And it's a ridiculous card. Why? Because you literally get to special summon from your deck a level 3 or lower psychic type monster. You can do it from your hand too, but you're going to do it from your deck. Now, yeah, it does get banished during the end phase of this turn, but that doesn't matter because you're using it as fodder. So, and remember, this whole deck has a bunch of punks that are level 3 psychics. This is a level 3 psychic. This is a level 3 psychic. Xiamen's a level 3 psychic. Shirakusai's a level 3 psychic. Even this hand trap, Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, is a level 3 psychic. So you could even summon this with it. It's insane. And then you could do it with 2 different ones. So if you open both, cracked. Just remember to use the card that you summon with this. Otherwise, it's going to get banished at the end phase. Meaning, when it comes out, you want to use it as material to synchro summon your synchro monsters from the extra deck. If you look at the extra deck, this kid's playing a lot. I mean, most punk decks play way more synchro monsters than this. I don't know what he's doing, why he's got so many XCs in his. So he's got 1 fusion, which is a punk fusion, by the way. Punk has 1 fusion monster. It also has this Jam Dragon Drive, which is its level 8 synchro monster. And then its big boss monster is Amazing Dragon. But it also has a sort of non-archetype, but really pretty much an archetype boss monster called Psychic Empire. This is our ultimate boss monster that just plays so well with Punk. It should have been made for Punk. It's just not called a Punk monster. So it's not considered part of the archetype, but it basically is. But this one is a Punk. It says Punk. It says Yugioh Punk Amazing Dragon. But you see they're all synchros, except for the fusion, which I don't want to get into how you get into that and everything. And then there's a lot of XCs in here. This kid's playing a lot of XCs. And then 1 Link, which is for his dragons. See, because it takes 2 dragon monsters to make this thing. I feel like this is too much XCs, but hey, he made Master 5. I guess it worked. I play obviously the 1 fusion. I play way more synchro monsters, and then I play like 4 links. I play this and 3 other links, actually. So that's how a deck is built. So basically, and remember what I said in the first video, you can have up to 15 extra deck monsters. Right here, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14, 15. And in Punk, you want to play 15 because you actually end up using almost all your extra deck monsters. A lot of decks don't use all their extra deck monsters. A lot of decks end up using only like 4, 5, 6 of them maybe. And then they have others that they use when they need to, or if they're in an emergency situation or something like that. A lot of extra deck monsters are actually just extenders to get into big extra deck monsters. For instance, this card is basically an extender for us to get into further plays and bigger extra deck monsters. And then the main deck, like I said, has to be anywhere from 40 to 60. Right now he's playing 40. And I would suggest most decks you want to play a 40. It's the most efficient way to do it. You could go to 41, 42 maybe, whatever. But I see a lot of people out there playing 60 card decks. I mean, the only 60 card decks out there that you would play are very specific niche decks that have these specific cards that actually cater to 60 card decks. Otherwise, there's no reason to play 60 cards. You're just making your deck way less efficient. But there are decks out there like that. It's not like uncommon. There are ones. So yeah, that's essentially it. You got your hand traps and your staples, which are the same thing. Staples, hand traps. You have Call by the Graves is another one. A staple not a hand trap, but a staple. But very important generic card. This is a punk trap, so that's part of the archetype. This is a punk spell. It's part of the archetype. This is a bestial spell. And then you have by the way, Italy, I didn't finish explaining. Just like Psychic and Punisher are one of our boss monsters. Okay, it's essentially a punk card. It was almost as if as if punk was made, because it was made after this card was made. Obviously, punk. It was almost as if punk was made with this card in mind, because it just plays so well with the punk cards, because they're all level 3 tuners, and then you could just easily special summon a bunch of level 3 tuners. This allows you just to play through so many interruptions and hand traps, and that's the whole point. You want to play through cards that can stop you. So this is a hybrid deck, or a standard deck might be like this too. A lot of decks just use two little engines, two different engines. Some people might even use, like, for instance, this is a way more punk-oriented engine, I would say. Right? There's a lot more punk cards in the bestials, but some people might play even less bestials and more punks. Some people might play even more bestials and less punks and go like 50-50 on punks and bestials. But punk is such a great engine that, like, for me, for instance, I play similar to this, mostly punk at full capacity. The engine is at full capacity the way I play it, almost. And then the bestials, I actually play about the same as him. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 6s. I play 5 of the 6s. I play an extra one of this. And he's got 3 Lubellion. I play 2 Lubellion. And I play the 1 Regained as well. So very similar. And that's what I mean. You'll see these builds and you'll notice that they're all very similar, but they'll have like 1 or 2 spots that vary. Someone might throw in something spicy, something different. Like, his extra deck is way different from mine. Like, way different from mine. Besides a few of the very good staples like Baron the Floor and Chen Yang, right? We talked about that before. And then the rest of the room of the deck, because if you look at it, you have how many out of these 40 cards are engine cards? Whether it be punk or bestial, how many are in archetype engine cards and not staple or garnets? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is a garnet. 12, 15, 18, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. I'm counting this as part of the engine because it essentially is part of the punk engine. So what was I up to? Shoot. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. So there's 26 out of the 40 are archetype engine cards from 2 separate archetypes, creating one cohesive engine, pretty much. I mean, they're each their own little engine, but they synergize well together. And they're 2 separate archetypes. That's your 26 cards. That means there's 14 cards that are completely generic and just have nothing to do with, the engines. And most of them are hand traps. Effect failure, hand traps, that's 3. 6. Maxi hand trap, 6. That's 3, 6. 3 Ash Blossom, that's 9. Hand trap. Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit is a hand trap that a lot of people don't play, but this is like the one hand trap that actually has synergy with the Punk deck because it's a level 3 Psychic Tuner. So it makes sense. And that's why we only play one of it. I play one of it as well. So 3, 6, 9, 10 hand traps in this deck. And then you have the 2 Call by the Grave. So that's 12. So 12 cards for basically protecting or disrupting your opponent that have nothing to do with the archetype or the engine. And then you have these 2, where he's playing the Ascendant of the Thunder, which is your Garnet. Garnets are just cards that you might throw in. So this is like a spicy play because like not a lot of punk decks or punk bestial decks will play this. I do, but I play it at 1 because I also play another Garnet called Assault Synchron, which is a tuner. It's a level 2 tuner that I like to have in the deck. So you can play your deck whatever you want. So that's 2 more. And we said so far 12. So 14. And out of the 14 cards that are not in-engine archetypal cards, 12 of them are staples that are hand traps or are something to stop hand traps, which is Called by the Grave. And then you have the 2 Garnets. So that's how like a deck is made up. Now, the ratios of something like this can be very different depending on the deck. There are certain archetypes that have an engine that's much bigger, right? So I wish I could show you one that I knew of right off the top. Rika, great deck, by the way. Ridiculously good deck. If you look at Rika, look, it's got 3 Maxi, right? It's got the 3 Ash Blossom. See how these are just staples? They're just generic staple hand traps that everyone's
The right
playing.
mattress makes everything
the
clear.
pattern forming here. What
better.
the fuck, man, with this shit? These ads. DK, you gotta fix this shit, man. Come on, what are we doing? This is actually a normal monster, by the way. Look at this. That's a normal monster. You could tell because it's the color's lighter, right? Rika plays this normal monster. If you look at the text on it, it's just flavor text. It's in quotes. They play this for synergy with their deck. But if you notice, Rika, look, the archetype is Rika. Rika Petal. This is not Rika. It's a Sunseed Twin, but it's part of another archetype called Sun Avalon, which is like a plant-based archetype that is really just an engine, a small engine, just like the Bestials is part of Punk. That's part of the Rika deck. So like you'll see this in a lot of decks. Like they have these little engines that just work really well. Lone Fire Blossom, not a Rika card, but once again, part of this Sun Avalon small engine that they use. Then you'll see Rika here. Pramila the Rika Fairy. Rika Princess. This is a great deck, by the way. And a not too expensive deck either. Something I would definitely suggest people making. Problem is, pretty complicated deck to play. Super combo heavy. Goes into crazy plays, but it's very powerful. Another Rika. Mudan the Rika Fairy. Snowdrop the Rika Fairy. This is a staple. This is a blowout staple. Destroy all spell and trap cards your opponent controls. Boom. It's a one of. Then they play if you could. This is a sort of like Italy for them. Okay, emergency teleport. Remember I told you it's not really a Punk card, but it is. This says if you control a monster, special summon 1 level 4 or lower normal monster from the deck. So this is a great way for them to get the Sunseed on the field. So this is like, yes, you could call it like a Garnet, but really it's a staple of this deck, right? It's like an non-archetypal, but pretty much part of the archetype, right? This is a staple. This is a blowout card, a staple blowout. Here's another Rika Glamour. It's their field spell. that they play at 3. This is Sunvine Sowing. This is part of the Sun Avalon archetype. So like sun is anything with sun in it is like Sun Avalon. This is Rika Concon. That's their field spell actually. Concon. Call by the Grave. Once again, everyone plays this card to stop the hand traps. Crossout Designated. It's another staple like Call by the Grave that stops hand traps and stuff. Evenly Match is a blowout card that you play going second. Staple, I play it. I actually play 2 of them in my punk deck. Imperm is another one. Staple, Hand Trap. It's also a hand trap, even though it's a trap. It's one of the, probably the only trap that's actually a hand trap in the game. And then Ricochet. So you have this mix. These are how decks are built. You have this mix of the archetype you want to play. So when you want to choose a deck, okay, I'm going to end this video off like this because I've been going for way too long. I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm the worst. Let me take a breath. When you want to create a deck, what you're going to want to do is you're going to look at these things and say, what deck would I like to play? Look to see what are the powerful decks. Maybe you want to play, maybe you want to be a meta sheep. Okay. Maybe you want to be a meta drone and play the top meta deck because you just want to win. Sure. You can do that. Look up the top decks. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to play a cool deck that you like. Look them up. You got to look them up. You have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it because Yu-Gi-Oh is a game that you can't just throw a bunch of cards together in a deck and play. You can't. You'll get destroyed. Nothing will synergize well. You won't be able to do anything. It'll be the most terrible experience of your life. And that's sort of what happened to me at the beginning because no one told me any better. I made a horrible synchro deck when I first started and had no idea what I was doing. And then I played Dark Magicians, which was a bad choice for a long time. And it made me actually quit the game. And then I came back and I built more decks and then I fell in love with the game again. That's another thing. You're going to want to build multiple decks if you can, but start with one you think you might really enjoy. And also, start with one that isn't too complicated. Like Rick is very complicated. I would suggest, and we're going to talk about this more in episode 3, but I would suggest something like Sword Soul or Fluanderies, even though most Yu-Gi-Oh players hate Fluanderies players, so just be ready to be hated. Things like that. Whatever, right? I'm getting tired here. But as you can see, the point is you have these staples, you got these hand traps, you got these going second blowout cards, you have, and then you have the archetype. And the archetype has an engine. So Rika has its own little engine in here, and people use it differently. If I go look at another Rika deck, it's not going to look like exactly like this. It's going to have very different cards at different amounts. Like, for instance, they have this card at 2, right? You could see it says the 2 times right here. Another Rika deck might have this at 3. I don't know. Whatever, right? So you tweak it to your liking. You test it. You got to play test it. Even today, I have to play test decks all the time because I don't know exactly what are the good ratios, especially in Master Duel where every game's a one-off match. It's very hard to find the right balance between cards that go second / hand traps and your archetypal and engine cards that are usually for going first because that's how you build your board with your archetype cards. And usually you'll see hybrid stuff like this. This has the Sun Avalon and it has the Rika. If you look at the extra deck, you'll see Rika and Sun Avalon. See, this is Rika Queen, Strenna. This is Teardrop the Rika Queen. This is Sacred Tree Beast Hypertron. This is more of a Sun Avalon card. And more of really just like a generic plant monster that they use. Here we go. Sun Avalon Dryas. So this is their Sun Avalon Link card that they use. Plant. But everything's based around plants, if you notice, in this deck. So that's the connection. That's the synergy. Sunvine Healer. That's part of the Sun Avalon archetype in the engine. Sunvine Thrasher. Part of the Sun Avalon archetype. Aram Surfery Jasmine. This is just like a plant generic link that they play. Sylvan Dance Peon? Yeah, Sylvan Dance Peon, sort of part of the Sun Avalon. Sun Avalon Melius and Bangla Dancer the Resurgent. This is just like another generic plant thing they play. So they have a few Rikas in there, and they got a few Sun Avalons. It's a mix bag. So another deck might have totally different amount of these, and even different cards. I've never even seen like this. I haven't seen in a lot of Ricka decks. So I bet a lot of Ricka decks don't have this card. So like you could throw your own little spice in there, right? That's essentially how you have to approach your mindset when building a deck. So there you have it right there. That was episode 2 of Intro to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel 101. I'm sorry it took this long for me to make it, and I'm sorry it took this long for me to talk about it in this episode. Hopefully it's not too long. But next time we will talk about gameplay mechanics, the flow state. We're going to do this on Master Duel actually, and I'll show you the Master Duel interface, everything you need to know about gems, crafting points, and stuff like that, because that's all the stuff you need for building your deck and for opening packs and all that great stuff. I'm tired. I'm Dreadcast. I'm your boy, and I'm out. So I'll catch you next time. And remember, like, subscribe. Come on, join the community, join the channel. You're a new Yu-Gi-Oh player, returning player, even if you're an old player, even if you're a boomer. Come in. We'll hang out. I'm 35 years old, so whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, yep. I appreciate y'all. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope this helped. And I will catch you guys next time.